Brian Stelter has been shaking the media industry up since his freshman year of college when he began a blog about TV news coverage, which he sold to Media Bistro in 2004. Prior to joining CNN as the anchor for reliable sources, he was a media reporter at the New York Times. In his 2013 New York Times best-selling book, Top of the Morning, Inside the Cutthroat World of Morning TV, was the inspiration behind Apple's recent streaming drama, The Morning Show, for which Brian serves as a consultant. So please give a warm welcome for Brian.
That's a first. Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm introduction as well. And thank you to all of you for your support of CNN and of the news business. Sometimes I still marvel that they allow me on television. Growing up as a blogger, as Kathy mentioned, blogging my way into a job at the New York Times, I always figured I didn't have enough hair to be on TV. I genuinely believed they would never hire a bald guy. But hey, I guess CNN took a risk on me, and I continue to be grateful that they do. It's an amazing time to be inside one of these television networks, to be able to have a small part, a small role in covering the revolutions that are underway. And I recognize that I'm a part of the disruption that we're going to be talking about all day today. And I think my bio kind of illustrates that by blogging my way into the Times and by jumping to television and launching a newsletter and all of that. The little commercial that we run on TV for what I do kind of shows all the different jobs I have, and it is illustrative of where the media world is these days. It's a 4-part job to go on TV, to host a show, to write stories for the website, to go on TV and talk about those stories, and to write a newsletter at the end of the day that sums it all up. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a blast. I remember the day going out in the CNN Blizzard Mobile, the thing, we drive around during the snowstorms. We were having a blast, get out and do a snow angel on live TV. Those sorts of things are a lot of fun. I can't wait to show my kids those videos someday. That is why, it's those moments, it's those enduring moments that make me believe in the enduring value and power of live TV. No matter what changes, and everything else is going to change around us. But I do believe that there's always going to be that space for live television. When something wonderful happens in the world, when something terrible happens in the world, or when you want to know how much snow is falling outside. There's always going to be that role, that power of live TV. But with that power comes huge responsibility, and that's what I'd like to talk about for a few minutes today. Huge responsibility, and I think we've all been reckoning and thinking about this responsibility, both those of us inside your televisions, inside newsrooms, and all the rest of us outside watching. The back half of the last decade was a chance for a lot of people to do a lot of reckoning, a lot of soul searching about the news business and how it fits into the wider media ecosystem. Talk about responsibility. I got to fess up to a regret that I have for popularizing the term, ready? Fake news. Now, it's not entirely my fault because it was being used by a reporter at BuzzFeed way back in 2014. He was talking about these lies about Ebola that were spreading on Facebook back in 2014, 2015. But then, I got to admit, I'm a little bit guilty. I started saying fake news before Election Day in 2016, starting to point out some of the lies and smears and hoaxes that were spreading on social media. It was a mess, running up until Election Day, all these BS stories on Facebook and Twitter. And I kept calling it fake news, and we kept talking about it after Election Day also, and all of a sudden, liberals started blaming fake news for the election, and we know what happened next. The term fake news was redefined. It was used in a whole new way, and I kind of wish I had never said it on TV. But I bring that up because I think that the issue of actually made-up stories, the issue of actual hoaxes and disinformation, is something that we are all reckoning with, both inside and outside newsrooms. And that started about 5 years ago, and it continues today. Sorting news from nonsense is one of the top jobs I think everybody at CNN and the CNNs of the world all have today. Because we all feel the fracturing that has been going on, this fracturing into a million pieces, with everybody consuming news in their own ways, in their own terms, from their own sources, on their own sites, on their own screens. This miracle device that we all have has also enabled so much chaos in the information world that couldn't have been fathomed, I think, by Steve Jobs 15 years ago. It's also allowed for a hate movement against the media. And, I was thinking about this recently when somebody accused me of hanging out at Jeffrey Epstein's house. Now, wait, you hear that and you think, what? There was a tweet that I sent out 10 years ago. It said, actually 11 years ago. It said, "I'm at Epstein's." Now, Epstein's was a great bar on the Lower East Side. And I was still single, trying to tell my friends where I was. Twitter was a happy place back then. Actually a social network, and not a swamp. "I'm at Epstein's," 11 years later, had a very different meaning, and a bunch of conspiracy theorists glommed onto the tweet and tried to claim that I was part of this worldwide conspiracy. And then it got worse. There's a meme made of my face and a couple other CNN anchors, and it said, "Why are these men on the Epstein flight logs?" And I'm thinking to myself, how do I disprove that? Like, how do I tell people that I never even met this pedophile? How do I even explain that I've never been on that kind of private plane? How do you disprove that kind of smear that spreads around social media? It made me terrified of thinking that if my kids are ever going to see that on the internet somewhere. There's a sense of powerlessness that I think many of us can feel in this disinformation age. Whether you're the target of the disinformation or whether you're just seeing it scroll past your screen, not knowing what to believe. Part of me, thinks that Twitter and Facebook continue to fail, and other companies continue to fail at this responsibility. But it's everyone's responsibility. It's not just the social platforms. I think newsrooms, news outlets, trusted brands have a responsibility as well. So what do you do when a tweet goes viral saying, "I'm at Epstein's" from 11 years ago? Well, instead of remaining silent as I wanted to do because it's so gross, I decided to speak out about it, defend myself, explain what was really going on, show people the pictures of the old bar, do whatever I can to get the accurate information so that at least the truth stands a chance in this chaotic environment. Another thing we can all do is to support trusted news brands in this environment of noise and nonsense. It does seem like phones and other smart devices have flattened everything. They've made, let's say, Politico and propaganda look like the same thing. But I'm heartened to see things starting to bend back toward recognized brands, recognizable brands, trusted brands. Trust can and is gained and regained every day at newsrooms like CNN and the Times and the Post and the Boston Globe and so many more. There's huge challenges, of course, and we've got a lot of self-inflicted wounds to heal up. But I think every day, in small ways, every journalist at my shop and other shops can either do a little bit to win trust back or do a little bit to lose trust further. It's like a daily game of inches that does add up to something really meaningful. We can do it through being transparent, or we can do it through running corrections. When I worked at the New York Times, my boss put the fear of, into me. He made corrections so intimidating that I was terrified to have to admit to him that I had misspelled a person's name or gotten a date wrong. That kind of proverbial hand slap went a long way toward instilling the values of accuracy and care in me. And that's what every young journalist needs. In every big and small newsroom around the world, around the country, it's that sense of responsibility, of caring about getting every detail right. And now I look at corrections as one of the most positive things I can do. I don't know if this sounds strange to you or not, but in my newsletter, when I misspell someone's name or I get a date wrong, I'm glad I get to run a correction because it shows the readers that I'm human, shows that I know I screwed up, And then I get to add something. I get to say thank you for telling me. Thank you to the dozen of you who emailed me and told me, or if it's a really obvious mistake, thank you to the 200 people who emailed me telling me about this error. I think it shows humanity in a way that we need to do more of, to admit to flaws and to explain the attempt at constant improvement in our profession. I'm increasingly thinking about news outlets like CNN as being a confirmation layer for the world. In a news environment where so much is unconfirmed or confusing or outright malicious, you're going to need confirmation layers, almost like a version of your glasses or a version of your phone, a screen on top of your phone, to confirm or reject information as it comes in. And that's what news outlets have historically been doing. Of course, we've been doing this for decades, but it becomes more urgent now to be that confirmation layer for the world when there is so much confusion. Kathy used the word quality, and I do think that is what it all comes down to for these big, old school brands that are making their way in a new age. You look at CNN, for example, and more people will interact with CNN every day online, on our digital platforms, than on television. That's an example of a successful old school brand playing a new game. But we've got to keep the quality up, or else none of it matters. And it's been a rough start to the new decade. To think about what's happened in the past month. Disinformation about Iran and the U.S., the strikes back and forth. There's been confusion about the trial, of course. And then there was a story that we all hoped wasn't true on Sunday afternoon. I was sitting in my office at 2:34 when TMZ reported that Kobe Bryant had died in the helicopter crash. And of course, like all of you, I'm sure, hoped it was not true. See the alert on your phone, wondering if it's true, knowing that TMZ usually gets these things right, but not wanting to believe it, and not knowing if it was actually real. So I did what I always do if I'm at work. I emailed the control room and offered to help if I could, because in those situations when there's a huge story that's about to break, that's like right on the verge of breaking, I find that's the absolute loneliest time for a television anchor. You feel like you are up on a tightrope with no net and no one there to catch you if you fall. So I always try to offer to help. I was at work, I happened to already be at work because of my show earlier in the day, so I emailed, offered to help. I heard back, 10 seconds later, yes, head to a flash cam. At CNN, we have these things called flash cams. They're basically just little closet-sized studios where you can do live shots. A lot of the times you see a guest on CNN, they're in one of these flash cams. Again, it can be pretty lonely in there. It's just you and the camera and not knowing what's going on. But I put my makeup back on, sat in front of the camera, and waited a good 20 minutes because CNN had not confirmed any of the deaths in the helicopter crash yet. And I'll admit, there's moments where you're sitting there waiting, wanting to help, wanting to contribute to the live coverage, where you might get a little frustrated. Why aren't we going with this yet? Other networks are. They are just putting on reports. They're just citing TMZ. They haven't confirmed it for themselves, but they're running with it anyway. But CNN is very careful on these moments. Every network makes mistakes. We make mistakes in other ways. But when it comes to something like the death of a worldwide icon, incredible care goes into these moments. The LA Times did something interesting around 2:50. They said, yes, we are aware of the reports. We are looking into them. We will let you know as soon as we know. And I admired that act of transparency in that moment. To say, yeah, we're seeing what you're seeing. We see all these rumors on social media. We're not blind or deaf to it. We know what's going on. We'll let you know when we actually have facts. And CNN did something similar. Top of the 3 p.m. hour, we reported that there was a helicopter crash, that we believed at the time 5 people had died, and didn't know anything more than that. To viewers, that could have been frustrating, but it was necessary to wait. There were 600,000 people watching at 2:45. By 3 p.m., there were 1.5 million. We're going up toward 2 million. The ratings are doubling, they're quadrupling, because people know to go to these trusted brands at a time of great pain or at a time of great circumstance. I find that viewers are really savvy about this, by the way. If we say something's breaking and it's not really breaking, which, I might have been guilty of a time or two, using that breaking news banner a little bit too much, viewers see right through it. they can tell that something's not really that urgent. But when the ground shakes, when there's an earthquake or another disaster, the audience does know and does come. And that is true even in this really politically polarized time when it can seem like no one agrees on anything. People still know what brands, what news outlets, what journalists they trust. They see something on Twitter, they don't know if it's true. They still want CNN and the Globe and the Times to confirm it, to be that confirmation layer. At 3:05, we started to pull away from the helicopter story because we didn't have it absolutely confirmed yet. We wanted two different sources to confirm the death before we went on the air with it. Frederick Whitfield was the anchor. She started talking about impeachment, and then about 10 seconds later, the second source came through and the email went out to the network. So she pivoted back to the helicopter crash. And for the next 3 hours, I was sitting there in front of a camera, like a lot of other people, just trying to help out, trying to provide perspective on a story that no one wanted to be true. I think we had to keep saying it over and over again, keep telling people that we were sadly confident in the information. And of course, this does lead to human moments that you can't create, or at least not yet, on social platforms or through algorithms. In the 4 p.m. hour, sometimes anchors have what's called an anchor buddy, where, so Anna Cabrera is anchoring the 4 p.m. hour, and I'm just sitting with her next to her, not weighing in very often, but just there to help whenever she needs something or has a question. And at that point, we knew that Gianna had also died. And so what I was doing was preparing once that had been confirmed, once we were ready to say it on the air, with information about her and stories about her. Thinking 10 minutes ahead, 15 minutes ahead in those moments is all that we can do, right? If you're in a control room, if you're on an anchor set, if you're in a newsroom, you're just trying to think to what that next beat of the story is going to be and how to best convey it to viewers as honestly and gently as you can. I do remember thinking that afternoon, I hope none of the family members are watching. But if they are, let's recognize that and be very careful. When Gianna's death was confirmed, again, through the newsroom, going through the approval process, I had a moment that was, I didn't realize it was happening to me at the time. I was talking about what Gianna and Kobe were doing, flying to one of her basketball games where he was going to be coaching, talking about what it meant for them to die in that circumstance. And I thought about my dad, who died when I was 15 of a heart attack. And he was coaching my youngest brother's basketball game at the time. And I didn't mean to blurt that out on TV. I look back and I don't know if I should be embarrassed about this or not. There's 2 million people watching, and all of a sudden I'm talking to Anna about my dad. But I said the one sliver of joy or hope that I could take away from my father's death was that he died doing something he loved. And I said, I hope that the Kobe's family can relate to that someday, can feel that same feeling someday, that at least they know that their loved ones died doing something they loved so much. So I blurred that out on TV. We moved on a moment later. I kind of didn't know if I'd actually said it or not. You ever have that kind of out-of-body feeling? And then I looked at my Twitter feed, my inbox, and I had viewers telling me that they were in tears because of what I had shared. And that's the kind of human moment that makes me believe in the power of live TV, the enduring power of live TV, and the enduring power of television anchors and correspondents and guests relating to people, connecting with people in an information environment that is oftentimes poisoned and attempts to divide us and make us feel like we're not connected. Television can and does provide that connective power each and every day, and especially on the best and like on Sunday, on the worst days. Like you always hope you're on TV during, a royal wedding, right? You hope that you get to be on during the happy times. But oftentimes we're there at the worst times. And it is in those times that when we show our humanity, when we show our accuracy, our transparency, that we can gain and regain the trust that I was talking about earlier. There's a flip side to this, and y'all probably saw some of these stories on Sunday and on Monday. There were some news outlets that made some embarrassing mistakes when the news about Kobe broke. There was an ABC reporter who was driving down the highway trying to rush to Calabasas, juggling 2 phones in his hands, stressed out, on live TV again, talking to millions of people. And he accidentally said that all 4 children had perished in the helicopter crash. And he was corrected pretty quickly. But that mistake went viral. It was starting to spread. People didn't know what to believe. Once again, not knowing what to believe. And notably, ABC took action. ABC yesterday suspended the reporter for an unknown amount of time. And I view that, as a statement by the network to say, when we screw up, we fess up. We don't hide from it. We acknowledge it. And hopefully we learn from it. Now, I think for that reporter, the mistake will ultimately be just a sentence in the book of his career. I find journalists most of the time learn from those self-inflicted wounds and benefit and grow from them. And I think the solution to poor journalism is more journalism. That is the ultimate solution. When there is a smear spreading halfway around the world on social media, when there's an error that slips out during live TV, the solution to poor journalism is just more journalism, better journalism. And we can all be learning from that. But I think we're in an environment now where we all have to figure out, both in front of the camera and off camera, both in newsrooms and out of newsrooms, how to use media rather than be used by it. How to use news and not be used by it. And the same is true for these devices, how to use technology and not let it use us. And that's why I say I am glad to see this bending back toward recognizable brands that do continue to maintain a lot of trust in a distrusting environment. As I mentioned earlier, starting out as a blogger, writing about cable news, never figuring I could be on cable news. I'm a product of the World Wide Web, so I don't have too much resentment toward the phones and the screens and the blogs and the social networks. They've helped make me what I am today. I met my wife on Twitter, actually, 9 years ago this month. She popped up in my feed one morning. I don't know who, here's a mystery. I don't know who retweeted her into my Twitter feed. I'll never know who the matchmaker was. We've tried to figure it out. We can't figure it out. But I spotted her on Twitter. I slipped into her DMs, as the kids say, and quickly moved it offline, met up with her, and the rest is history. So I can't begrudge the social networks all that much. I've still got a soft spot somewhere in that heart of mine for Twitter. But there are things that technology cannot do. There are things that those platforms cannot do. They cannot provide those human moments that people want and need and expect. Right now, it seems they cannot provide that confirmation layer to tell you if something really terrible or really wonderful has happened or not. And I think as we head into this new decade, what I hope to do, what I hope you all continue to help us do is to tell people that there are humans behind the reporting, that there is that human advantage to the reporting that we all consume, the news that we feel like we breathe in every day. It's reporters and editors and videographers and assignment editors and production assistants and anchors on set. They are the ones that build trust and ultimately build these brands and keep them going long into the future. June 1st, CNN turns 40 years old. 40 years old, and I shudder to imagine where the brand will be in 80 years. But I do think these core tenets about that human connection and that confirmation layer will be in whatever form CNN is in 2060. I don't want to think it's too far. It's too far ahead to think about. But those values, those core values, will still be in the product, whatever that product looks like. So I want to thank you all for hearing me today. Thank you for your trust and your support, most importantly. We cannot do what we do without all of you in this room. So thank you very much.